So a little bit about me, because I'm assuming that some of you know who I am and some of you don't. My name is Jenny. I am living on Vancouver Island at the moment in Canada, but I'm from England, and I am a visiting associate principal lecturer in equine sciences. So after I finished studying, I went to be a lecturer, and I've been lecturing since 2000, and I want to say seven, I can't remember. And I've primarily started in exercise physiology, sports medicine, biomechanics, and then as my interest into the rider side of things progressed, and I got my personal training and my really into that side of things, and then I decided that's where I wanted to focus on my research. So I went and started a PhD, and that is on the physiology of horse riding. That's a little bit about me. Welcome to Event Fit Basics. This download is going to give you some food for thought. It's not going to be the answer to all your questions. Hopefully it will provoke more questions than it gives you answers. So why do you need to be a fit rider? Okay, I have and can do lectures on this for hours, so I will try to keep this as brief as I can. To remove the horse and concentrate on yourself. Now I know a lot of you are going to want to multitask and you're going to be short for time and you're going to want to do it on your horse, and there are ways that we can incorporate things, but you need time to work on yourself, to work on your posture, to work on your imbalances, to work on your asymmetries, and not inflict any bad skill-related transfer to your horse because you're not focusing on your horse, focusing on yourself. So it's time for yourself. If you treat yourself like an athlete, you're more likely to actually perform like an athlete. Psycho-emotional stress. This is something that we see in athletes. Now, a lot of people always say to me, oh, but your heart rate's only high because you're anxious. Well, yes, your heart rate does go up with an adrenaline response, but if your heart rate went up to max, or 90% max, which is what we see in riders, when you were nervous, you'd be so exhausted that you wouldn't be able to run away from anything. So, yes, your heart rate does go up because of an excited response, but there's also a physiological demand there as well. So we do see pre-competitive states. We see people in a state of psycho-emotional stress, so we see elevated heart rate before they're even competing, and the fitter you are, the better you can combat that, because as you know, when your heart rate goes up you get fatigued, and then you get confused and your skill rate goes down. So being a fitter person in general can help with the mental concentrative side of horse riding. To reduce and offset injury, you might start riding when you're 5 and you might not finish till you're 70 plus, and that is a long time doing the very repetitive movements of horse riding, and therefore you need to offset injury. You need to offset injury because at some point in your career you're likely to fall on the floor. It's been shown in research that riders have quite high muscle strength but low bone density, and that's never a good thing, to have strong muscles and weak bones, because horse riding isn't particularly weight bearing, because the weight bearing is mostly done in the pelvis and not around the rest of the body. And you see a similar trend in swimmers, and that's why swimmers do land-based training, because they have strong muscle tone and weak bones, and that's never a good combination. Especially but a lot of riders are female, and therefore we get bone-related changes as we get older. To cope with the physiological demands of the sport, so this is the main bit of my research, and some of you that know me will have probably been involved in the research, but horse riding is hard work. It is, I can't go into it here, but we have high heart rates, quite moderate blood lactates. We see quite low oxygen consumption with a high heart rate, which is quite unusual. We see high amounts of isometric muscle work, and a lot of the fitness programs I see are concentrated on dressage riders, and I think often we forget about race riders, show jump riders, barrel racers, eventers. Obviously that's my research area, and that's quite different. The demands of anything that includes galloping out to sea and jumping are very different to dressage, and I think it's really important that we... a programme I would write for you if you're a dressage rider would be quite different to a programme I would write for you if you're an event rider. And I think we need to remind ourselves that you require more than just posture and tone when you're jumping massive fences, or when you need to stick after a bad judgment call or something. So you do need to be able to push yourself to near maximum physically to cope with the demands of the sports that require fast pace and jumping efforts. And I can, if you want, go into a lecture at some point. To prevent staleness, being around horses is you have to be mentally tough to stick out a job working with horses, even if your main job isn't horses. Going to the yard before work, I've been there with kids. Like, you go to the yard before work, you do the horses. One kid's on your back, the other one's screaming because it wants something to eat. You know, you come back from the yard, from work, you got to do the same thing. It's tough, and so it can, anything that you're doing for yourself and a bit of time for yourself can prevent downess. It can also add another stimulus to your training, so it can really, really beneficial for you. Maintain skill and coordination throughout competition. You might not need the fitness to get through your competition, but fitness is the fitter you are, the better you're going to cope with any skill and coordination, and you're going to offset any poor judgment calls or any, you know, have you ever had joint freezing where you just completely forget what test you're supposed to be doing, and then your muscles go rigid because you have to concentrate so much to remember what the test is that you've forgotten about your body. And being fitter, stronger, and working on that skill-muscle connection can actually make you a better rider. So that's why you need to be fit to ride. And there are other reasons too. So what should you include in your training? Okay, mobility and flexibility, yes, we don't want to forget those. And most of us are a sucker for it. Jump on the horse, jump off, don't warm yourself up, don't warm yourself down. Get in the gym, you've only got an hour, pump it out. We need to make time for mobility and flexibility. So all the sessions I write, I will add mobility and flexibility into the warm-up and the cool-off, as well as extra sessions. I usually write them as extra sessions so that you can do them whilst you're Netflixing and chilling or whatever, so you can do them at some other point in the day. We need to incorporate strength, both compound and accessory, and what I mean by that is we need to not forget about the main lifts. Your deadlifts, your squat, your benches, your pulls, all the other, you know, and then the variations around those. When you look at the programs that are available for riders at the moment, they're all good. I'm not dissing anyone. Everyone has different methods, but I just want you to be mindful that there are always different methods to get to the end point. None of them are wrong. They're just different methods. Different trainers have read different pieces of research or have done things with different clients that work. And I have looked at a lot of the other programs that are out there, and a lot of them I like, but I don't always see a completely functional approach to general preparedness for life and for training. I see a lot of emphasis on sport specificity, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is. So when you're coming to your gym work is supplementary to what you do on the horse. What you do on the horse as a horse rider is always number one. The skill on the horse is always going to be more important than what you do in the gym, always. So if you had to choose between one extra session in the gym or riding an extra horse a week, it might be that you ride your extra horse a week. And that's something that we can talk about together. And I get this question a lot, like, what exercises can I do that replicate horse riding? Can I sit in this position and pretend these are the reins? And yeah, it has its place, but you don't see rugby players pretending to throw rugby balls in the gym. They do that on the pitch when they're working on their skill. The gym is for the gym. The gym is to work on things, particular muscles, particular physiological demand that you need on the horse in the gym. So let's leave the specificity, and it is specific, so we're going to work on things that are specific, like mobility through the hips, like core strength, like shoulder scapular, like scapular stabilisation, like ankle mobility. So we're still going to work on sport-specific variables. We're going to work, for example, a sport-specific variable in horse riders is something that is in my research, and I probably shouldn't talk about it too much, but I feel like it's really important. I believe that we have like a quasi-isometric phenomenon that occurs in horse riders, and that is because part of the movement is static and part of the movement is dynamic. You need to be able to train that in the gym. That doesn't mean I'm going to get you sitting like you're riding a horse. It just means that I'm going to get you to do something static whilst moving something else. So it might be, for example, that I get you to do an isometric squat and raise your hands forwards and back. Well, actually, that's quite like horse riding. But also I could get you to do a plank and lift your legs up and down, and that would be quasi-isometric too. So we do want it to be specific, but we don't want it to be replicative. We do need to do conditioning. I favour high intensity interval training. I find it really effective both for weight loss, which loads of us are wanting to achieve. It's good for the horse as well, if you're a bit lighter. And it also is time efficient. You don't really need to be able to sustain endurance on the horse for competition. It's more for training. You don't see many competition riders riding for hours apart from endurance riders and things. Most of the time it's your training, so you're riding your horse and training multiple hours a day. So it might be that you need a long slow distance conditioning session in there to cope with the demands of the training rather than the competition. Rest is crucial. You need to rest. Rest is part of the training. I always advise you have at least one full day off, or you do your mobility and your yoga on that day off. Nutrition, I'm going to do a separate video on nutrition because 80% of any benefits you see with training are through your diet. And skill work. Skill work will include anything you do on your horse, but it can also include things that we can start to incorporate into the gym too. So things like, and this will be further on in the training program and it isn't within the basics, but things like doing your HIIT workout and then reciting your dressage test. Can you concentrate when you're knackered? That's what you want to work on. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be trying to catch a ball, or so doing a HIIT circuit and then getting someone to throw you tennis balls and trying to catch them afterwards. It could be standing on one leg for a certain period of time afterwards. It could be when you're on your horse, practicing the dressage test, saying the dressage test out loud whilst you're doing something else. I say dressage test a lot because that's where I see a lot of joint freezing, particularly with eventers. You see a lot of joint freezing, so what happens is they have to concentrate and then they can't move the body. So it might be whilst you're in the gym, lifting, you're going to recite your dressage test out loud, so you're having to concentrate whilst physically moving your body. So it's little skill things like that you can start to bring in. So your event fit 7-day plan works on 1 day rest, and then you're going to do 2 total body strength circuits. You're going to do mobility, core, HIIT circuits throughout the week. And the reason I've planned it like that is because I believe, as a horse rider, you never use your body in isolation. You use it in total. You use everything. And therefore you should train for that way. So at the moment, I'm following an aesthetic lifting program, like a bodybuilding type program. I'm not riding at the moment. I don't have horses out here. So I'm not competing in any sport. I'm not playing rugby at the moment. I'm not training for anything. So I decided to train for aesthetics. So I'm doing splits. You don't really need to do splits as a rider. You could do push-pull legs, so you could do 3 weight training sessions a week. But I prefer a total body approach for riders. I just think it's more functional. So this tier system that I've used means that you do a total body exercise, a push-pull, quads, and then I have categorised things that I feel are important for riders. So I always include scap stabilisation work. I always include glute med isolations, and I always include core. And that's how the programme works. You'll see it in the card in the back. I program most of my things like this, and then I have regressions and progressions. So you might start with, for example, like your total body exercise. You might start with a burpee because that gets you used to your hip thrust, that movement of hip extension, which is really important in riders. You think of your show jumping, you're jumping, your rising trot, anything like that. You need to open and close the hips relatively quickly without wobbling all over the shop. So it might start with a burpee, then it might progress to deadlift, and there might be a sumo deadlift kettlebell swing or something, I don't know, but all the exercises can be progressive. So that's how I've done it. And I also do things, single arm things, because you need to work the cross sling of your body, so anti-rotational stuff. And then as the program progresses, so not in the event fix, but as you would progress your own program, you would start to do reactive based training, things like that. If you were clever about it, this Event Fit Basics, a 7-day program, working on the theory that you should repeat a training program at least 3 to 4 times. You could repeat this for 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. I usually do 3 weeks progressive and then a week's deload on the 4th week to get you ready for your next program. That's the sort of basis that I work on. Hopefully that just gives you a bit of an introduction. Hopefully it's provoked some questions. I am going to do a question and answer video. So if you want to post questions on the Facebook page, any that you have, I will endeavour to answer them for you.